one of our taglines is our main tagline is bringing biodiversity back, right? And so like, what does that look like? That's like increasing varieties that are available on the market, full stop. That's something that we try to do. But then, right, these diverse mixes, I think, is another way of doing that. And then a third way we do that is through our work with the open source seed initiative.
Welcome to episode 59 of the Seed Farmer Podcast, the podcast where I want you to harvest seeds from some of the vegetables and flowers growing in your farm or garden, and then to plant that seed out to grow delicious vegetables and beautiful flowers. If you enjoy the Seed Farmer Podcast and find it to be a good resource that helps you improve your seed work and farming, please support the show at spreadsheet.farm/support-podcast. I'm your host, Dan Brisebois, seed grower at Tournesol Cooperative Farm and author of The Seed Farmer, a complete guide to growing, using, and selling your own seeds. Today, we've got another seedy conversation where we talk about amaranth and climate chaos and seed contracts and all types of stuff. But first, news. So I got an email, I just got an email about an hour ago from Chris Smith from Utopian Seed Project, and this is what he wrote. So as some of you know, I've been working on a new book for the last couple of years, and I'm closing in on the final edits. It's due to be published by Chelsea Green in the fall of 2026. I have Peter Taylor taking some beautiful photographs. He took many of the shots, the okra shots for the whole okra. And I'm working with Lisa Chen on illustrations for the book. Chelsea Green doesn't offer an art budget, so I've just launched a fundraiser to raise money to pay Peter and Lisa for their work on the art program. The fundraiser has rewards attached to various levels of support. So, Chris's book is called Saved by Seed, Embracing Diversity, Adaptation, and Resilience. And the link to the fundraiser is in the show notes. I loved the whole okra, and I can't wait to read this book. So if you want to support the book, go click on that link. And now let's get to today's conversation. Sarah Kleeger is this episode's guest. Sarah Kleeger runs Adaptive Seeds alongside Andrew Still in Sweet Home, Oregon. Their journey began 20 years ago with the Seed Ambassadors Project, a massive seed-finding expedition through Europe that saw them return to the U.S. with over 1,000 rare varieties that had almost no commercial presence in North America. In this episode, Sarah shares what it's like growing over 380 crops in a year while balancing trials, stewardship, and producing seeds for the catalog. We discuss the open source seed initiative as a way to keep seeds in the public domain, and we get into contract seed growing and how Adaptive Seeds tries to incentivize quality and share the risk with their grower network. We also touch on the impact of wildfires and smoke seasons on both farmers and the seeds themselves. In the deep dive, Sarah and I get into her favorite crop, amaranth. We cover why amaranth is such a climate-adaptable grain, how to determine the perfect moment to harvest the seed, and Sarah's threshing machine of choice. And of course, we talk about the cats of Adaptive Seeds. Enjoy the conversation. Hi, Sarah. Welcome to the Seed Farmer Podcast.
Hi, Dan. Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
It's taken a lot of coordination to make this work, but I think it's going to be fantastic. Why don't we start off with your seed story and how you came to be interested in seeds?
Okay. Yeah, great. So along with my partner, Andrew Still, we started working on organic vegetable farms in 2003. And we started being interested in seeds sort of right away, just always wanting to go deeper with everything. And seeds are one of the foundations of agriculture. So, right, with soil and water and all those other things, sunlight, I guess. So yeah, sort of dabbled in seeds a little bit. And eventually, after a few years, we took our winter time off from being seasonal farm workers and traveled through Europe with a project we called the Seed Ambassadors Project. And we really we wanted to travel, but just not be tourists. And so we created the Seed Ambassadors Project as a way to sort of connect with people and learn about seeds and collect seeds. And so that was in 2006 or 2007. And basically, that trip kind of became the foundation of our entire lives at this point. And here we are. We went to 9 countries in Northern and Eastern Europe. We were really just interested in varieties that would do well in northern areas and also overwinter in our somewhat mild winter climate. And yeah, collected about 1,000 varieties. So that became the foundation of adaptive seeds after a few more years.
So, in addition to Northern and Eastern Europe, did you do a second trip afterwards?
We have taken a few trips. My dad lived in Thailand for about 20 years, so we've gone there a couple of times and traveled around Southeast Asia. We've been back to Europe a few additional times to other countries.
When I first discovered your work, Andrew, and your work, it was in the Seed Savers Exchange catalog, and I mean, I'm definitely interested in brassicas, and suddenly there were a bunch of kales and crossed up stuff in there, and I was just so excited to see somebody who liked that kind of stuff. And then it was even more exciting to see that project jump from a project, I guess, into a business that had long reach. Because I remember trying to figure out how I'm going to order some seeds from you from the yearbook. And suddenly now it's just so much easier to get your stuff. And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. Wow. I guess I didn't realize that our connection goes way back to that point. So we did find just so many brassicas on our trip, which is very exciting, but also just being like 2 farm workers. The farm that we worked on, the guy gave us 2 beds that we could grow seed out on. And we started growing things for evaluation and increase, but it was like, with brassica, especially Oleracea, it needs a large isolation distance. And we were really just growing things out to see how it was and sharing through, like you said, the Seed Savers Exchange yearbook and through seed swaps. And it was only like a year or 2 before we were like, okay, these 2 mechanisms that we have, it's not doing a good enough job of sharing the seed out there. And so adaptive seeds was really not, trying to be a business necessarily, but just as a vehicle to help us distribute these seeds that we were saving. So yeah, I'm glad it became easier for you. Certainly a lot easier for us.
So you didn't have that dream of being a seed company when you were growing those things out?
We did not have that objective, although along our seed ambassadors trip, we visited with Ben and Kate of Real Seeds in Wales, and Ben was like, 100%, you need to start a seed company. Like, you are going to start a seed company. This is your future, and this is how you're going to do it, and you're going to grow by X% per year. And he was so right. It was kind of amazing. Smart guy.
Do you want to tell us about Adaptive Seeds today?
Sure. We are located near Sweet Home, Oregon. It's about 2 hours south of Portland. We're a farm-based seed company, so we grow about 75 to 80% of the seed we sell, like variety-wise. And we only source certified organic seeds and only from growers in Oregon and Washington because we want our seeds to be regionally adapted, although we do sell seeds all over the country and all over the world, and we get good feedback from folks in other places. We have a few seed priorities that are maybe different from other seed companies. I guess the regional adaptation, that's a pretty common one, but we do also really like overwintering varieties. We really love diverse gene pool mixes. We have quite a few of those that are sort of interbreeding populations. And we really like open source seed. Of course, as being certified organic, one of our priorities is we're trying to make more varieties available as certified organic seed. And yeah, there's probably more to it than that. But currently, most of our sales are through our website. We have maybe about a dozen seed racks locally.
How big a team do you have at this point?
There are currently 5 of us. Sometimes there's like 6 or 7. So we have 2 full-time or like 1 full-time and 2 part-time crew members who rotate seasonally between the field and the seed packing house and do our seed cleaning. And then there's current title order fulfillment manager, but who has become just so much more and really holds down the fort with all of the order fulfillment side of things. We have an inventory manager, and then Andrew, who does our sort of research and development and manages our website, sewing lists and stuff. And then me, who does like, whew, I mean, everybody does a lot here. We're a small team, so everybody wears a lot of hats. But I do, like, I manage the field crew, what goes where, planting through harvest and threshing, and then I pass things off after they're beaten to a pulp. And then I manage the finances and HR, and I do some of the marketing. I write our newsletter currently, and I also work with contract growers.
Can you talk a little bit about what the evolution of your business has been like in terms of, I guess, facilities, infrastructure? Like, I know when I first visited you, it looks different than what it looks like now.
I guess, yeah, it does a little bit. So, right, we moved onto our farm in 2009. That's the year we started Adaptive Seeds, although sort of coincidentally. And at first it was just in the mudroom, and then it expanded into the mudroom and our third bedroom. And then in 2018, we moved into a job site trailer inspired by your office trailer. What do you call it? Your warehouse?
We call it the seed trailer or the seed shack. I can't remember what we call it. But yeah, it was the job house. It was a worksite trailer.
Are you still in it? Is that still your facility?
We are now renting warehouse space and in the offsite and in the process of we're starting a building project this spring and hoping to have a warehouse building on site. So that's like new and we're really excited about it and scared.
Yes. Wow. Congratulations and good luck with that move.
Thank you.
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, we were able to, through an inheritance, purchase a property sort of across the street and renovate it into a place for our offices and order fulfillment and sort of warehouse space. So the farm is still, we do all of the growing and seed cleaning and everything still at the farm. And then once seeds are cleaned, then it gets transferred to the, we call it HQ2 because the trailer was HQ. That's across the street. So there's about 2,000 square feet over there that we're currently using.
Is there any specific of those transition steps that were more important than others for how your business ran or runs?
I don't know that we've changed a whole lot of our processes. I mean, we have definitely changed a lot of our processes, but I'm not sure how much of that has been space dependent. I think it's a lot better for our employees to have their own bathroom. That's not in our house. It's better for me sometimes, but yeah, although I have, the people who just work in the office have expressed that they're sad that they don't get to come to work on the farm anymore. So, but we certainly have a lot more space. There's more space to expand into over there if like one day we decide we have the capacity to add like cover crops on a large scale, which is we're not there yet, but I think it's really just, like we were elbow to elbow in the trailer, and certainly during COVID that became difficult. We had to remove a packet filling station while seed sales were larger. So it's nice to have elbow room, I guess.
So let's talk about diverse gene pools. How do you choose what crops you're going to work with as a diverse gene pool?
Well, typically they're outcrossing crop types, right? So ones that will be like freely crossing with each generation. So that's one. Two is like crop types which are relatively like difficult to stabilize and find isolation for. So the first one that we did, you might be familiar with, is our Kale Coalition. And this started from our Seed Ambassadors trip, and we had like 17 distinct varieties of Oleracea kale and just no hope of finding isolations for that many. And so, we decided to just grow them all together and see what they did as a way of both sort of preserving the genetics within each of the varieties, but then also, just letting them have a party and see what came out of it. So yeah, that's definitely part of the influence sometimes, is just like, well, we can't handle these as 17 individuals, but together we can handle it. And then I think, I know that pedigrees have their place in agriculture. And we do definitely do a lot of selecting for certain varieties to try and keep things true to type. But I personally am way more inspired by and excited about having things be different from their neighbors. So, I don't necessarily want cabbages that are all over the place. They should have a good head and, mature in a certain window of time. But, things like leafy greens or tomatillos or melons are, yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity there for something exciting and new. And then also opportunity for people to then just take it in a direction that they like.
How popular are your diverse gene pools with your customer space?
I think they're pretty popular. It depends. We have three different types of customers, right? We have sort of the home gardener, the maybe like slightly more advanced, like homestead type of gardener. And I think that those ones really like the gene pools because they have more space and more capacity anyway. And then we have small market growers. We definitely get a lot of those that like our Kale Coalition. And they say that their customers at market appreciate the diversity, kind of like a bunch of rainbow chard, right? The rainbow type kale works within that same sort of thing. And then we also have a lot of actual seed companies who buy the bulk on our seed. I don't think there's so many of those customers who are interested in it.
They're not going down that road with you.
Nope. There have been a few other initiatives that have really sort of taken the diverse gene pool mix and run with it. The going to seed people are really taking that aspect. And, it's like one of our taglines is our main tagline is bringing biodiversity back, right? And so, like, what does that look like? That's like increasing varieties that are available on the market, full stop. That's something that we try to do. But then, right, these diverse mixes, I think, is another way of doing that. And then a third way we do that is through our work with the open source seed initiative, which we could talk more about later if you want.
Definitely. So with your gene pools, how do they start?
Usually they start as a trial. And this is a thing that Andrew, like I mentioned, he does our research and development. So he spends a lot of time just looking for different seed sources and varieties that might grow well for us or fit a certain niche or gap that we have in our catalog. And so we'll grow out a bunch of varieties side by side, and then sort of choose the ones that we like the best and, remove the ones that don't quite fit. I did recently, well, it's been actually some years, but I was once really interested in pie pumpkins, and I did a survey of like what was available for pie pumpkins, and it turns out there was maybe like 5 or something, like in every seed catalog and the Seed Savers Exchange. Well, the Seed Savers Exchange, obviously, there were a few more there, but for what was commercially available, there was just nothing. And so it was like, that was a big motivation to just like, what can I find out there? And then let's get them all together. And so that became the Pie Pumpkin Party. And it throws a lot of stuff, and some of it's great for pies but it's not all, but you can carve them if they're
not. So how long ago would you have started that gene pool?
I think that it's at least 10 years ago. It was definitely when the Seed Savers Exchange was still, a book. And yeah, that was actually where most of the diversity that I was able to find came from. Because I think, and we also wound up pulling in some hybrids just because that was what was out there.
And over the subsequent grow outs, like what kind of selection are you doing or choosing of your next generation?
I feel like all of the sizes and shapes are fine. Right. It's really, it's like a texture and color that are the things that I've been focusing in on. So, some pumpkins get pretty stringy or are like a pale yellowy. So I try and get rid of those ones when I see them. And we do stock selection for flavor every time. So and frequently we'll grow out like from the stock selections that we take, we'll grow out like a line, a row or whatever of each of our favorite fruit, so that we are trying to have the culinary qualities be slightly improved with each generation.
So, just to make sure I understand what you're saying so I can re-explain it. So you're going through your field and you're choosing a bunch of them, and maybe you're writing a word or numbers or something on it, and then maybe tasting them in the fall and in the winter, and then choosing your best individuals. And then your best individual, each one becomes a row in the field. So if you had 15 best individuals, then there might be 15 in the field.
Yeah, something like that. And then we always do put a little bit of the Gen Pop. The bulk seed also still kind of sticks around a little bit. So because we're not trying to eliminate those genetics, we're just trying to favor the traits that we like.
And I don't know if I should say how much has that changed, but like, is it working?
I think so. I think so. I mean, there are always like some surprises that come out of it. And I think that that's part of the beauty of it, right? Is every year there's a new opportunity for recombination. So have I found any that I'm like, I'm gonna take this and make this be a variety and select it down? No. But also I don't have isolation available, and I'm a lazy seed farmer and I'm not hand pollinating anything. So yeah, it is a popular variety. I think a lot of people are interested in the idea of, right, pie pumpkins, and then also the decorative aspect of it. They're cute.
I was going to pivot to another topic. Do you want to say anything more about diverse gene pools?
I find them exciting just for the beauty and diversity of like flavors and tastes and textures and stuff, right? But I think it's also important to just keep in mind that the like resilience factor in a time of climate chaos is also an important reason for us to have diversity in our gardens. And I think that the gene pool mixes are a pretty easy way to get that.
It feels like, should we be talking about the Dry Farming Institute right now as kind of a piggyback off resilience?
Oh, sure. So the Dry Farming Institute is something that came out of Oregon State University and is now its own like sort of separate institute. And they have been focusing on like water resilient farming strategies. In the arid West, we can go 3 months without a drop of water, like no rain at all during the growing season. And a lot of people just don't have access to water. And so they've been working for a number of years now on finding dry farm adaptable varieties, which is varieties that can be, planted and then not given any water at all and still produce a seed crop. And they've found some pretty amazing results and things become more adapted the more they're dry farmed. So specifically crops like tomatoes and corn and beans, they have had a lot of good success with. So we partner with them. We have a dry farm tag on our website. We have a collection. We just to try and like make these varieties available to people. And then they do a lot of education as well, locally, and I think throughout the Northwest and West Coast. So they're having it's going to be too late by the time we're live, but they have a winter convening. There's a Facebook group. They have a website, just a lot of resources for folks who struggle with access to water.
So the varieties that you have tagged that way on your website, are these varieties that are coming out of your trials or coming out of their trials, or maybe both?
Yeah, it's their trials. So they're doing, at the university and then also with like the collaborative of growers. Things generally have had to have like more than one person say that they've had success, and or, science to back it up. Um, we we don't dry farm very much. We do a couple of crops. I just learned sesame is something that sort of does much better when dry farmed. So we grow our sesame crop without supplemental irrigation after it's established. And sorghum also prefers to not get watered. So those are the only crops that we grow dry farmed. But some of the crops that we sell with the dry farm tag have been grown under dry farm conditions. So we're working with growers who, for garbanzo beans and corn, that the seed is actually dry farmed. So there is that sort of knowledge within it, I guess.
So I think I'm going to leave the dry farming at this point, and we can move into talking about OSSI. Do you want to tell our listeners what OSSI is?
Sure. So OSSI stands for the Open Source Seed Initiative. And this is a nonprofit that's been around for probably about a decade, that basically it's sort of like, I think the name implies a lot, but it's like a way to protect germplasm from patents through a pledge. And so plant breeders can pledge a variety to OSSI. And that's basically saying, like, you have the freedom to use this seed and the derivatives of this seed in any way you choose, except for patenting it. And it's a way to sort of promote keeping seeds and germplasm within the public domain. And so there are dozens of seed companies that are OSSI partner seed companies. There's a huge network of plant breeders. So this is for varieties that are new varieties that have been bred. Then the breeder pledges a variety, and then it's covered under the pledge, hopefully to protect it from future patenting.
Do you have a lot of varieties as part of OSSI?
We do, actually. So we have a few adaptive seeds originals that everything pretty much that we have released is OSSI pledged. And then we also try to add more varieties each year. So there are, I don't know off the top of my head how many OSSI varieties we have, but it's certainly more than 20. Yeah, and it's just a way of, another way that we sort of approach the bringing biodiversity back tagline.
Essentially by making sure biodiversity stays available and legal to conserve?
Yes. Thank you for finishing that sentence for me. So it's pretty exciting. There's, I think, more varieties are getting pledged every year. They've streamlined the process for pledging so that, like, any backyard grower with a few small steps can then pledge their varieties. It used to be a little bit harder, but it's pretty exciting. And we have heard stories of pushback of, seed or not seed, but plant breeders who like work with big corporations have reached out to OSSI breeders and been like, by doing this, you're basically making this so nobody else can use it. And it's like, no, we're making this so that you can't use it and then take it away from everybody else. So our friend Avram, who does true seed garlic, or true garlic seed, has had a couple of conversations like that. Because not very many people, like nobody breeds garlic from seed, right? And so, corporate interests are really interested in mining stuff that's in the public domain, but with this, it makes it a little bit harder. So,
So we've talked about a lot of different varieties. You got your gene pools, you've got OSSI varieties that you might be carrying from other farmers. You have all the stuff that you've been selecting and, named varieties. Now, that's a lot of varieties. And
Wait, I just looked this up and we grew 380 crops last year from seed. That's what we planted. That doesn't count like biennials or perennials, of which 150 of them were for sale. And the rest were evaluations and trials, breeding projects, etc. So yeah, sorry, it is a lot. We do a lot.
So that's just what you're growing. Then you have multiple years that you're growing stuff, and then you're also getting things in from other seed growers. So it's a whole bunch of stuff. How do you steward this from year to year? There's stuff that you choose to keep growing because there's a commercial demand, right? But you also have a larger goal than just meeting the commercial demand. And there's stuff that you're keeping for other reasons too, and plus stuff you just like too. But do you want to tell us about that stewarding decision-making process?
Yeah. Do I? I mean, it's complicated, right? Because we came back from our seed ambassadors trip 20 years ago with 1,000 varieties, right? And then so many of them weren't available in the US. And so our first grow outs were evaluation and trial, but also like we have this preservation instinct. So, we try and keep the seed in our archives from dying. So that's a big chunk of what we grow every year. But as far as seed for sale, like certainly, we have a certain amount of time that will keep a seed lot active before regrowing it. It's not every year, newsflash. I think seed growers know that. But we do also have like a number of varieties that we sell that don't necessarily pay for themselves, but things that we really want to have be accessible for people. Looking at you, millet. Millet is a big one of those that's not super popular, but an important crop globally, actually. And we have like half a dozen of them. And then, like you said, there are things that we just love. Like we have more amaranth varieties than we probably should, and that's because it's my favorite crop. And I could go on and on about that, but I think it's certainly not all profit driven. That's for sure.
How often do you drop varieties?
We try really hard to keep things in our catalog. In the last couple of years, though, we have gotten to this point where it's sort of just becoming a little bit more than we can maintain. And we are always excited about new things. So we have begun dropping things that really like cost us more than what they bring in, but it's mostly in categories where we have a great diversity. For example, we have 100 tomato varieties, right? So every year there's like a couple that it's like, okay, well, nobody cares about this, about this one. So let's focus our tomato growing on varieties that like people are interested in. And then, we grow about 25 varieties for seed every year. And then we do another 25 to 30 for preservation and evaluation and trial. So we will still maintain those lines, but just not go through the whole expense of germ testing every year and making a label and all of that stuff. Yeah. So we drop some things sometimes. Because you just have to, we just have to. It's a sad reality, I guess. I wish we could sell or, continue to offer everything forever, but alas.
So you mentioned earlier that you do also get in seed from other growers. Let's talk about contract growing. What does that look like on your farm?
Yeah, every year we work with about 12 to 15 growers and contract out somewhere between around 40 seed crops. And these are primarily varieties that are difficult to isolate. So like a lot of squash and brassicas, and then some things that it's just our scale is a little like we've done beans before a few times. So like we grow quite a bit of beans, but sometimes we can't quite handle all of what our needs are. So yeah, every year it's just like we see what we need and then try and match it up with people who are interested. I really like to work with the contract growers and yeah, learn from them as much as like I like to I do what I can to sort of support their growing our crops too.
What do you like about working with them?
I've certainly learned a lot about about different ways of doing things. I think that's one of the really beautiful things about, growing in general, but also seed farming, that people have different approaches to processing seed. We got in a pepper crop this year that was like fermented. I'm not familiar with fermented pepper seed before and was just like, oh, this is a thing you can do.
Did it germinate?
I don't know yet. It's currently at the
Okay.
lab.
So that's not an endorsement yet.
Oh, yeah, that one came in late, but we're just like, okay. I mean, the grower had done it before, so.
How does your contract growing look like? Does it look like kind of a standard seed contract?
I think in a lot of ways it does. Yeah, our contract is based on contracts from other seed companies, and we've sort of tweaked it over the years. We have tried to add incentives for like saleable seed. So if like we want nothing, we really want seed that we don't have to do anything to. So if a seed grower is able to turn in seed that's like clean and ready to go, then they get a 10% bonus on that seed crop if it's turned in on time. And then, we also pay for stock selection and a high germ bonus. So we try and incentivize the quality beyond the basic, dollars per pound sort of arrangement. We also sometimes will give a year one payment for biennial crops. And that's sort of on a as needed or sort of with the riskier crops, like carrots, for example. Yeah, and we have in our contract, there's sort of a breakdown of like how much value is assigned to each stage of the growing process. So it's like 30% for biennials in the first year, and then 30% for the second year of growth. And then like harvest and cleaning is, some smaller percentages. And so because of that, in addition to like paying extra for seed that's all the way clean, we also are able to work with growers who like have isolation and are able to produce a fair seed crop, but then also because of other obligations or like lack of infrastructure can't clean it. And so it's like, okay, you turn in this seed that you have threshed and maybe given a rough winnow, and we will do the rest of the cleaning, and then we'll like deduct a certain amount from the price or charge by the hour for how long it takes us to clean it, sort of depending on what works out better for the grower. Because we do really want seed growing to be a thing that is a viable enterprise for growers. So, to that end, we also usually ask, the negotiation is like, how will you grow this for us? This is what we've been paying for this crop. How much do you need to be paid for this crop? We acknowledge that the skill and the time and everything that goes into it. So the prices are negotiable, and usually I think sometimes significantly higher than what other people offer, but mostly determined by the grower.
So you mentioned when things are in on time. What is on time?
Oh, I think it's earlier.
Do you have a specific date for most?
Yeah, our contract states October 15th.
Wow.
I know, it's very early. I think. Actually, I don't really know.
Well, it depends on the crop, obviously. Like
Right. So there is like December 1st for winter squash. And I think this year I'm gonna bump the peppers back as well. But yeah, it's hard, but because we're such a small team, it's like our people who are cleaning the seed and or conditioning the seed and then sending it to the germ lab are also the same people who are setting stock, dealing with everything else for launch, packing the seeds. So it's like both for our own labor and ability to address seed in a timely manner, because we want to be able to pay people in a reasonable amount of time. Like if we don't get the crop in by October 15th, it's a lot harder for us to meet that that turnaround time. And then as well as right then it should be ready to go by the time we launch our New Year's catalog. And that frequently has been the goal, that it's like that crop is available then, January 1st. And we send all of our seed out to a third-party lab or a few different labs, and in the fall they get really backed up. So yeah, it's like the earlier that we can get the seed in, the better sort of for all of the rest of our processes. And then also, the more likely the grower can get paid within that calendar year, which some growers that's really important for.
I can appreciate that for sure. You talked about paying for different percentages for what part of the life cycle, I guess, of the crop. And so you talked about, like, if it's biennial, you have a certain amount for year one. But let's talk about an annual, and you're contracting for like 10 pounds of whatever the annual is. And let's say in the end, like, the grower does a lot of the stuff right, but in the end they only get 4 pounds. Are you basically working on per pound basis at the end, or do you have other mechanisms related to that?
Yeah, unfortunately, if the crop comes under, there is not another mechanism that kicks in, although there is a point, like if it's like 4 pounds out of 10, then we're just paying for the 4 pounds and saying, sorry, better luck next time. But however, if there are crops that are otherwise like a complete crop failure, like poor germ, or just like we had a grower turn it that we asked for like 5 pounds of a carrot, and I think they turned in like 4 ounces that was very dirty or something, would be maybe enough to replant, but certainly like a loss otherwise. We do pay sometimes like a what do I call it? It's like a follow through bonus or something, like some kind of like, here's some money for your effort. It's like a consolation prize. That's not what it's called. There's a line item made for it that is escaping me right now. But just that, like, if you turn in absolutely anything, then we want to reward that, because even if, like in the case of this carrot, it was a pollination issue in a cage, and maybe also aphids or something, I don't exactly recall the details, but we have had, especially when we're working with crops that are like, this is the only seed of this variety, like in this country potentially, that we know of, and we have had growers just like deem something a crop failure and till it in, and that's been just heartbreaking, because it's like, well, okay, there went the one shot at that one. And so we try and really encourage growers that, like, even if it looks bad, like, let us know and we can work something out, because the selection that happened under those conditions, like, actually might be helpful for the genetics of the seed as well as like our ability to preserve it. So yeah, we do have other little mechanisms to like kick back.
Is there anything else you want to talk about with the contract growing?
I don't know. I think one of the things, I've been sort of on the periphery of there's a group that, what is it, the Seed Worker Organizing?
Seed Workers Organizing, SWO?
Yeah. And have been really trying to take into account like some of the issues that they've been bringing up. And I think that's a really excellent group of people, like, doing some really good work. And I think that seed growers have a lot of power, right? I mean, that's where the seed comes from, right? It looks like it comes from seed companies, but really it's coming from growers. And I really just want them to be valued. And so I try and do what I can to value that work. And, most of the time it works out.
Something that I wanted to talk to you about is kind of related to seed security, but maybe from like a different angle, is I'm on the East Coast and a different climatic zone, but One of the things I see, well, here through the news for sure, but then also see through Instagram feeds and stuff, is all the wildfires. And it's something that I remember a period where different seed growers are kind of talking about, all right, so we've evacuated the farm right now. We're hoping that it doesn't hit our warehouse. And or maybe one person has stayed back to finish these specific tasks while we're, just hoping that things turn out all right. And it just struck me as another type of challenge related to seeds. There's so many other things. We've talked about corporate control already. Now we're talking about nature. I know there's a human part in this nature part of it, but still it's natural forces. How much of a threat is this for seed security?
Wildfires specifically or climate chaos generally?
I guess both, if you wanted to address both. And I say both because a lot of the seed in the world is grown in drier climates because it's just easier. You don't have to worry about things rotting on the plant. And so it's a different kind of threat than where we are. We can get wildfire smoke, but it is like distant from us, and at least so far, and I hope it stays that way.
Well, I think our biggest experience with the wildfire threat was in 2020 when we had to evacuate. And although they did let us come back, and we did come back every day to still try to harvest our crops, I feel like the wildfires typically are not, lapping at the doors or whatever of agricultural land. And when I've seen wildfires go through areas where it's actively farmed, like irrigated land has been, sort of more resilient. The Holiday Farm fire, which was the one that caused us to evacuate, just tore through a community that was up the hill, and the farmers that we know that have irrigated land, vegetable farms, the fire just sort of went around them. However, the smoke season is real. It's harmful for human, everybody really. And we do have frequent seasons where if we are going to be working outside, the air quality is such that we need to wear a respirator. It also, in 2020 especially, the level of smoke was and lack of sunlight and lack of circulation because of that really did impact the plants themselves. And we got a lot more powdery mildew settling on plants earlier, and things just weren't ripening because they just weren't getting any sun. So there can be those types of effects from it. But I don't know, in the bigger issue, luckily so far it hasn't been every year, and I hope that it never is that way. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a case by case issue. I do think though that, yearly we're seeing the effects of extreme climate on farms in general and seed production in particular, whether it's fire or drought or deep freezes or we had an ice storm that took out a lot of our biennials a couple of years ago, but also farmers are used to dealing with bad time weather. So
you do what you can to get ready for it, and then when it happens, you do what you can to minimize damage, and you don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right. I mean, we're always saving. Crop failures happen for all sorts of reasons. Climate being, an increasing sort of a reason that is occurring more frequently. And we always have enough seed saved back to try 3 times if things go sideways.
So part of the lesson here is make sure you keep remnant seed.
Oh, 100%. Yes.
If you're already a seed farmer, or even just thinking about harvesting seed from your plants for the first time, head over to seedgrowers.farm for my free seed grower resources. There is cross-pollination information, seed yield information, even a few seed spreadsheets. There's also a list of my favorite seed books and podcasts. While you're there, you can also sign up for my weekly newsletter to get seed grower tips and stories straight into your inbox. So head to seedgrowers.farm for my seed grower resources. Now, back to the show. Should we switch into a deep dive in a crop?
Okay, sure.
Do you want to talk about amaranth?
Do I want to talk about amaranth? I want to write poetry about amaranth, except I'm not super poetic. Yeah, I really love talking about amaranth because I just think it's the best crop ever. From a seed production standpoint, it's pretty straightforward. I think it's accessible to pretty much anybody. And so I don't know where to start. Like from amaranth, one of the reasons I love it is that it can be all things to all people, right? Like starting from the germinating stage, right? It's sold as microgreens or salad greens. And then depending on the variety, you can go to be like an ornamental flower. It's all beautiful to me because I'm obsessed. But there are varieties that are just flowers. There are varieties used for dye. There's grains, of course, as well. And so I think just like a beautiful crop with all of the uses, and the fact that like one seed can make like a pound or half a pound. I don't actually have it dialed down to like how much, but if you grow them big, which I really like to do, they're just like millions of seeds, maybe not millions. And the grain is nutritious, like all parts of it. It's not just like you can eat it, but also it's nutritious. And talk about like climate adaptability. It's a C4 plant, so they're acclimatized to like hotter, drier lands, and they're more efficient with like water uptake. And yeah, crop of the Americas. I don't know. What else could you ask for?
So I've got so many questions. With brassicas, there's a bunch of different species, and I've figured it out, and I know what crosses with what. I've had a really hard time with amaranth. Do you have any taxonomy to share with us?
Yeah, not really. We have amaranth SP for there's certain varieties that like we don't really know what they are. But yeah, they're the common one, the one that is like most of the flowers and most of the grains are the same species that is Amaranthus caudatus or something. I don't speak Latin. But yeah, so that's the most common cultivated variety, but there are a couple of others. And of course there's also pigweed, which is an amaranth, but a different species. Yeah, there are some pretty gnarly species of amaranth out there too, which I don't think I'm advocating for.
Though they are edible, and they have nutritious qualities. So like if we had to.
Yeah, I mean, at Adaptive Seeds, like we do sell weeds. So I'm not sure why we don't sell pigweed. Maybe someday.
Do you see much crossing in your amaranths?
We don't, but we also don't grow them side by side. So yeah, our farm is like a half a mile long and quite narrow. And so we are able to use 2 isolations per year, and we'll grow the amaranths closer together than that. But
how close?
Maybe like 500 feet.
And is that good to seeing no crossing?
Yeah, we haven't seen crossing with that. Although it's not 500 feet upwind downwind with nothing in between. It's 500 feet sideways to the wind with a creek in between, or a lot of other stuff.
And stuff that might be in flower.
Correct. Yeah.
You've mentioned how easy amaranth is to grow to seed, and I've definitely, I know what you're talking about, but I've also had a few challenges. And I mean, we have 2 things that we deal with. One is just our summers can be dryish or they can be wet, but the fall can be really wet. And so and this is maybe true for like stuff like quinoa also, but like we're trying to harvest, some crops we can let it dry down on the crop and have no problem, or almost dry down. But with amaranths, if we wait too long, there's either weather gets in the way, or else maybe, you can get seed shatter. At what point are you harvesting an amaranth plant?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's got a really broad harvest window, but I think as a seed grower, do you like bite on seeds sometimes to test?
I do bite on seeds. I haven't bitten on amaranth, or not as a test, but I've bitten on for other reasons. But but I do bite on seeds. Yeah, try not to damage my teeth though.
Yeah. Yeah. So, there's all seed sort of goes through these three stages. That's like the milk stage and the dough stage and the what is the third stage called? I forgot. But so that's like different levels of sort of maturity within the seed. So at the milk stage, if you bite on it and it's juicy, right? That's the milk stage. So it's like seed not ready yet. But typically, seed can be harvested and will successfully after ripen if you harvest it when it's in the dough stage. So that's if you crush it or bite it and it's like, you know, creamy, like doughy, has some consistency. Then
It's more So like maybe the milky is like juicy, the dough is squishy, and the other one, which I don't know either, is kind of more like it cracks or crunches.
right, correct, exactly. Or like will break apart or something.
Shatter.
Yeah. Yeah. Although, right, shatter means something else in seed as well. So
It does. It does. I thought that when I said it, but yeah.
yeah, but I almost said that word too. And I was like, no. But exactly. So amaranth it will hold on the crop a long time. Of course, if you have weather issues, then that's a thing that you need to look out for. But that's actually something else that I've learned through the years. And like this is coming from someone who grows seed in a very arid place and can, go many harvest seasons without the threat of rain at all. But that seed can take some rain. I mean, you probably know more about that than I do. But I used to really approach seed growing as like, this is precious and it can't take any rain at all because it will ruin the crop. But actually, that's not true. So I don't know where your line is of like how much rain it can take before it's moldy or whatever.
I lumped it in with quinoa. That has a much lower threshold of being able to get wet. But I mean, our challenge is it could be that it starts raining first week of September and it doesn't stop, And there might be like always some rain all the time, and we don't have a specific window to go in and get something. And I think that it can compromise seed quality. And I don't think I've ever seen amaranth germinating in the flower. Like, I mean, I've seen other seeds germinating from humidity, but it's still something that I'm trying to get ahead of.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things, as seed growers, like we're frequently looking for, or we tell people, signs of maturity in seed are like the senescing and browning of leaves and all of these other things. But like amaranth, frequently we're harvesting when the plants are very juicy and the leaves are still, like vibrant and full of life. Like they can be like relatively green, and when they're in that stage, green as like green plants, right? And when they're in that stage, I think they do shed water a lot better because the seeds are still covered in their panicles or whatever. And that though amaranth can be in that stage and be in the dough stage seed wise and still be able to be brought in and be undercover and after ripen.
So one of the challenges I've had is like, so I've had some amaranth seed that's just been fantastic. Bring in the plants, let them after ripen. There's a ton of seed and it germinates really high and it's wonderful. And it keeps that germ for a while. And that is my favorite thing for all seeds, really. But I've also had with amaranths a few lots where I've brought in, and now I'm wondering whether, like if it's a black seeded amaranth, they can be pretty dark early on. And maybe I brought it in at a milkier stage. If that's the case, then like I've had some lots that have had like 40% germination and that have been hard to clean up afterwards. But I'm wondering maybe if I just need to be crunching some amaranth in the field to see where it's at.
Yeah, I mean, I do, but that's because I just like it and I want to eat it. And but also just is this ready yet? Because it is a crop that is like it tends to ripen for us in early September. And I just want to get things out of the field as quickly as I can, even when the threat of rain is not there, because by late September, oh boy.
You got other things coming in?
Right. I mean, also, we do have the threat of rain starts in September. And frequently we can go through at least the first couple of weeks of September without rain, but then And we got a lot of beans, and those really don't play well with rain. But we have also sometimes amaranth does have fresh seed dormancy. So I don't know what kind of seed testing you're doing, but certain labs will like test for dormancy if you are sending it out, and that's a little bit harder to tell maybe with a home germ test. And then the following year there'll be 100.
Yeah. When seeds are dormant, sometimes I'll just soak some in water for 24 hours and then we'll drain it and then germ it and then see if that germinates. But also we'll just hold on to stuff and test it again later. But with amaranth, we've had couple lots that have not gotten better. I just got rid of some that like the quantity broke my heart to be composting this, but it wasn't going to go anywhere. And now I got to put some more amaranth in my crop plan.
And it was a black seeded type?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, so you didn't like turn it into cereal or add it to your baked goods?
I have discovered that my family has a limited tolerance for that. And but I guess that is a missed opportunity. Have I just broken your heart?
No. It's fine. I have a lot of amaranth in my pantry. How often does it make it into my meal? Not that often. Although I am making bread today. Maybe I'll throw some in.
So if you had any words of advice for amaranth growers or would-be amaranth growers, what is one or two things that you'd want to make sure that they did right? Or just did?
I definitely would recommend transplanting it and getting it in, as early as you can. It loves the warmth. So, plant it when you plant your tomatoes or something in order to make sure that the grain or seed is ready by harvest time. I think amaranth is one of these like sort of facultative crops that will grow to a different size depending on how much resources it has. And I really like giant plants. So I give them, 16 to 18 inches in row and grow these like great towering giant plants. That's fewer plants to harvest and deal with afterwards, but they do get big and heavy and sort of harder to haul. You can plant them much closer and then they'll stay, a lot smaller. So it's something that could be considered. For threshing, we after ripen every single seed crop that we grow that's a dry seed for about a week. And amaranth also benefits from that. And the threshing magic is the driving on it with our 1992 F-150. That's our threshing machine of choice. And amaranth threshes out real well that way. So yeah, but you can also just hit it with a stick and the seed will go flying. So I think it's pretty straightforward. I think amaranth is one of the more straightforward dry seeded crops, I guess, if you are in a climate where you're not getting rained out.
Well, I think we can have quite a good success, and maybe I'm just harvesting some lots too early, and I'll pay more attention next time.
It is a little bit, the seeds are so tiny, it is a little bit hard to tell if you're like, wait, is this milky or doughy or whatever? You might have to eat a few.
I'll try to channel my inner Sarah when I'm doing that. Let's get into the wrap-up questions. What would you tell your younger seed-growing self?
Nothing profound, because I'm not profound. But I did learn very recently, speaking of seed getting rained on, that actually there are some crops that are better weathered, that like seed crops which have like dormancy issues, like you said, you soak them in water, that it took us magenta spreen lamb's quarter is one of them that we grew really well for a while and then just were only getting dormant seed lots for a long time, and then through Frank Morton learned of this better weathered concept and started leaving it out to get rained on. And I think I'm previously mentioned that like I used to think seeds were precious and couldn't get rained on, but like actually they can. And not to stress out so much about that. And then just in all of the different diversity of plants, of course there's going to be different sort of mechanisms for that. So I don't know, part of the magic.
What would you say to market growers to inspire them to start growing seed?
I think that if people are not inspired to grow seed already, that they shouldn't do it.
You're on the wrong podcast, Sarah.
I know. But it just, and I think seeds are inspirational on their own, and I don't know that there's anything that I can say that would motivate a person who's not otherwise motivated. And having worked with like numerous seed growers or would be seed growers who are excited and inspired to grow seed, that like when the vegetable or market season picks up in the fall, if those seeds are not something that you are passionate enough about to make be a priority, then you've just wasted a lot of time and resources getting to that point to be disappointed. So yeah, I've seen too much heartbreak from people who like think that they can do it, and then their priorities shift to, getting those heads of lettuce to the market. And yeah, so I think the inspiration is like it has to come from within. And also, just keeping in mind that like it's a longer term payout. But I think that the return is, obviously can be really significant in so many different ways if you're successful with it. So yeah, sorry to not just be jump in, it's great, it's amazing, but
Is there something that I should have asked you?
I just want to take a minute and acknowledge how awesome it is to know you and to have worked with you for like these many years. I will never forget. It was 2016. I looked it up, and we were presenting together on a panel for the Organic Seed Alliance conference on seed economics. And you came over beforehand, and we were sort of comparing notes. And my presentation was just entirely based on enterprise budgets for a few different crops and looking at the like wholesale versus retail. And I had, these great spreadsheets and cat pictures, and I was feeling really good about myself. And but just in the like dialed down sort of enterprise budget level. And you asked me about, you zoomed out and you were like, well, okay, this is all fine and good, but like what about bigger level? Like how much do you make and how much do you want to make? And at that time we were not making any money. PS. And I was like, gosh, Dan, I think it would be really great if if we could make $15 an hour. Like that would just be great. And you said to me, do you know that that's $60,000 a year? and and it just like totally blew my mind. Because no, I had not in fact ever done that math. I had never made that much money in my life. And yeah, it was just kind of like almost like an aha moment of then we proceeded to talk about making a living, which we've talked about a lot throughout the years, and how many $3 at that time seed packets it takes to make a living. But yeah, it was kind of a big wake up call that I had just been so like dialed into the details and just sort of hoped that it would all work out from there. And you were like, let's talk about big picture. And I really appreciated that. And I don't know how many years it took us to get there. I don't even know, like sometimes we still don't get there actually, to where we want to be now. But anyway, I just appreciated that perspective. And I think that you have helped a lot of growers like sort of understand the different levels of things making sense. And so yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for that. Thank you for my personal awakening to how numbers work back in 2016.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I guess you're welcome, but yeah, thank you for sharing that. We've talked about sustainability in all kinds of ways in this conversation, but if and you talked about seed growers. You talked about seed growers needing to make a living and like talking about their prices when you're negotiating contracts. But you're also a seed grower, and so it's that's part of the whole process.
Right. And the expenses, the enterprise budget of growing seed, I feel good about most of the time, but all of the other aspects of running a seed company actually is like that's a whole nother ball game, as you know, expenses and yeah, opportunities. So Anyway.
I actually did have one question that I forgot to ask you. I have it written down, but I forgot to ask you because we had so many other things. But can you tell us about the importance of cats on a seed farm?
Man, that could have been my deep dive. Yeah. I mean, well, first of all, mental health is the most important thing on any farm, and cats are our pathway, one of our strategies to mental health. But really, I think the cats, obviously on a more practical level, help us with pest control and dealing with the mice and unfortunately birds sometimes too, but rodent pressures around our garage, where we have a lot of our seed is sort of unprotected. The cats protect the seeds in the greenhouse and all the outbuildings. Can't speak highly enough of having cats. We currently have 4, 3 of which will allow us to touch them. One who's sort of a free agent, but they work hard for us. And can't recommend enough. Get a cat or a few.
And for anybody who's listening who is not subscribed to your newsletter, they're missing out on your cat corner.
Yes. We do like to say cats grow seeds. They've been saving seeds with us since we started, and we do on our newsletter every time try to feature a cat interacting with some crop that is currently happening on the farm, because they're out there in the fields sometimes more than we are. And they're cute.
How can people find out more about what you're doing?
So our website is adaptiveseeds.com. And we are occasionally on Instagram at adaptive_seeds. That's pretty much it.
Well, thanks so much for coming on and talking about all these seedy things, and have a fantastic season.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dan. This has been great. And you too. The sun is shining here. The season is already starting.
And that's episode 59 of the Seed Farmer Podcast. Thank you, Sarah, for being on the podcast. I'm wondering if we should be growing more amaranth. Thank you to Sophia Sidelton for the theme music. You can hear more of their music at sophiasidelton.com. Thank you to Molly Brisebois for editing the episode. And thank you so much for joining me in these conversations with seed farmers. You can find more seed growing resources on my blog at seedgrowers.farm. While you're there, you can subscribe to my newsletter full of seed growing, crop planning, and farm spreadsheets. You can also find out where to order a copy of my book, The Seed Farmer, a complete guide to growing, using, and selling your own seed. And you can support the podcast at spreadsheet.farm/support-podcast, or follow the link in the show notes. If you haven't already subscribed, now's the time. You don't want to miss next episode. Until then, happy farming.